Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, I've got another deck profile for you. This time, we're updating Labyrinth post ban list. I know Labyrinth didn't really get touched on this ban list. In fact, you could argue that with Lightning Storm going from 3 to 2, it actually helped this deck just a little sliver in the format, as well as just all the best decks kind of getting at least a minor to major hit to them aside from this deck. So this deck is just in a really solid position. This is a really different take than from what I've been seeing. There is you've been seeing a lot more furniture Labyrinth going around as of late, kind of to avoid stuff like Droll. But I think this version has even more cool stuff going on for it. And I already made a video this week talking about how like the Fiend pile deck could be a thing. This is kind of like the current iteration of it without being able to play all the cool stuff that gets tied together when the new Unchained cards come out. So let's get into this thing, starting off, of course, with our main girl lineup. One copy of Ariana, one copy of Lady, and one copy of Lovely. This may look super strange to you, but trust me, it's going to make sense as we get further into it. You really just do not need more than one of each of these in this list. We have another normal summon that's better than Ariana, so I like her at 1. I don't want to see her that much, to be honest. I'd rather be pulling her out of the deck off of the traps anyway. Lady is the one that I would consider playing more of, just because she's the best one of the 3 to like hard open, because even opening her with furniture is quite good. But still, 1 is fine. And then Lovely, she is the main boss monster of your control game. Once you get her up and she is rotating for you, she's plussing you every turn, she's ripping cards or popping cards on that your opponent has, which is insane. I think 1-1-1 is a good ratio there. Sticking with that though, we move forward with the furniture. 3 copies of Stovey Torby. I love this card, it's great. 3 copies of Chandraglier. I love this card too. Has some cool synergies in this deck that make it a little better than Torby, but also Torby has a couple synergies in here that it makes it better than Chandra. So they're still really close. Particularly Chandra being a level 3 is the big one, but both really good for what they need to do for your deck. I love it. And the last one here is Kuklok. Just one Kuklok. You get it when you need it, not any other time, and it works out pretty well. And it actually rotates back to hand very often because of how often we're just using our furnitures to discard, which is great. So 10 Labyrinth monsters, that is a bigger ratio than you normally see in a lot of builds, so that's really cool. Moving on, this is the cool part of the deck to me. Triple copies of Tour Guide from the Underworld. Awesome card. This card just summons level 3 Fiend from deck, negates its effects, but whatever we get ain't doing much on the field, I'll tell you that much. All right, from there, we move to some BA monsters. 2 copies of Skarm, 1 copy of Farfa. This is such a cool lineup to me because these are, in a lot of decks that you see them played in, like can definitely be some big bricks. You don't usually use their effects to extend from hand unless you open like exactly both of them, or 2 Skarm, or 1 and 1. You could use them just to make a rank 3 line. But normally, we're just pitching them from hand, or summoning one off of Underworld, or sending it straight from the deck to the graveyard. We have plenty of ways to do that, but hard drawing them is not even that big of an issue because of Stovey and Chandra and other outlets we have to kind of get them made use of. So really cool. There, no complaints. Tour Guide offers so much value. The last level 3 that I think matters here for this lineup is Sangan. It's really cool card. The basis of this is that turn 1, you can go Tour Guide, summon Sangan, link them off for a Cherubini. That will get Sangan to search you any hand trap in your deck, or potentially, even one of your Labyrinth furnitures or something else. There's a couple other utility cards. And then you also get to send with Cherubini, send Skarm, and then Skarm get an end phase search. So like you just get 2 free searches off of just Tour Guide, and you've got to link 2 on the field to make do with what you want. Really good value. There's other things you can do too. We'll talk about that when we get to the extra deck as well. This package feels good. Tour Guide to me is the most powerful normal in the deck, so I really like it. From there, a couple of these guys. Just one each of the 2 Shizu Shufflers. These cards are quite good. These are fully cuttable in this list, in my opinion, because you just don't have to play them if you don't want to. Because I'm still personally expecting Kashtira to be the best deck in the game. If that's still the case, then these are obviously not very good versus that deck, but they're actually pretty dang good versus like almost every other matchup in the game, or at least in the metagame. So I like that idea. I still think the deck has a decent matchup versus Kashtira overall. Aside from that, like going second can be annoying, but going first, at least I like our odds, and then post side, you know, I don't hate the odds either, but you know, it is what it is. You're going to make that decision. You don't have to play both. You could play one in the main, one in the side, because technically these are searchable off Sangan. There are lines where like you could use the Skarm search on end phase to grab Chandraglier, and then you could use your Sangan search to grab one of these. So that would get you a trap plus one of these set up engraved. Depending on the matchup, that could be really, really, really potent. But yeah. All right, moving on, a couple defensive cards. I am on 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. I also have 2 copies of Droll Lockbird and 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit here. This is, keep in mind, this is super early into the new format. I'm not sure exactly what hand traps are going to be best. I think you want to at least play probably 1 copy of each of these 3. That way, once you know the matchup, you can grab whichever one you like. I think there's a couple of other ones you could definitely consider as well. Veiler's another one, depending on the matchup, could be really good. I think Ghost, not Mourner, Ghost Bell, as well as maybe even DD Crow. There's a handful of them. There's a ton of hand traps that are like super searchable, and that's what's so cool about that Sangan line. Once you know your matchup, you're able to grab whichever specific hand trap you think is going to cook them up the most. So yeah, that's it for everything there. Obviously, feel free to mess around with that lineup and figure out what you think fits best for the format. The last card I'll say for the Sangan search is Santa Claus. He's searchable off Sangan. He does bypass Sangan's restriction because he just has a summon condition. It's not an activated effect or anything, so you can still fire this. So even going second to Sangan can at least get you this to like help you play or turn off certain stuff on your opponent's board, which is really cool. Plus Kashtira is a pain, so yeah. From there, into spells. Triple Prosperity, that's it. You got to have some extra consistency here. I don't even think Extrav is that bad here if you want to play a little more budget and you only have access to Extrav. I don't think that's terrible. You're going to have to adjust some of the ratios in the extra deck. My extra deck has a lot of 1-offs. You obviously want to play more 2 and 3s, but I do think that's possible for sure if you want to play something very close to this variant. And then I do play 1 copy of the Field Spell. Not sure fully how much I love this card just yet in this build. I need to test around with it more. The idea was we're playing a much, much smaller trap lineup. So if I'm not able to connect to the like removal traps, utility traps in the extra deck, then if I can get these off of like Stovey and Chandra now are connecting me to this, which means all of my in-engine traps are actually now Dryden's as well. So that was the idea. We'll see how it goes in testing. It feels like sometimes it's just a win more card, but we'll have to see if it actually feels worth it. I mean, worst case scenario, we're playing a deck that has a lot of discard potential, so it just becomes an easy discard target there, but we'll see. And then we get to the trap lineup. Triple copies of Big Welcome. This is the best trap. It just is. It is just straight up better than Welcome. In fact, I only play 1 Welcome now, or at least in this build. I think it's possible to play 2. I just don't think it's fully necessary. It really doesn't feel necessary. It goes, if I already have Big Welcome, then I get Welcome, and that's it. Like I'm never opting to get this card over Big Welcome. It's just always better, I find. So yeah, I still want to have the 1 copy of it because like having them together happens all the time and you want to have that second search setup target, but yeah, that's fine. Utility traps, 1 Archfiend's Ghastly Glitch, 1 Ice Dragon's Prison, 1 Dimensional Barrier, and then we'll throw the triple imperms down there. So technically we have 10 defensive cards, 9 hand traps plus the Santa Claus, but I think it's also worth mentioning that between having 6 copies of Stovey and Chandra together, plus 1 Farfa and 2 of the Shufflers, we technically have like extra hand traps in the deck that can become hand traps. Plus ways with the furniture to just set up going into our next turn that like can be pretty strong. So there really are some strong factors that help us go second, even aside from just those 10 hard copies, which is cool. But yeah, talking about this lineup here, Imperm is Imperm. Not going to talk about it in the new format. I expect it to be decent. So I think we're going to be in a slightly more mid-range format. D-Barrier is your like blowout target. Sometimes you can, when you go first, you can set this up to activate it on the opponent's turn. Ice Dragon's Prison, cool utility card. Not 100% sure on this because I didn't think it was incredible last format. There were definitely matchups where it was really good against. I think versus the Pirellis is pretty good, versus Mathmech it's pretty good. You know, Kescher is usually not getting stuff engraved super consistently like early on to kind of make this amazing, but like theoretically in the mid-range game it could be okay, but I'd probably end up siding it out in that matchup. And then Archfiend's Escalation. This card is just incredible, whether it's going to be a pop plus a search with Sangan or a pop plus a extra banish with Farfa. This is an incredibly powerful card. You don't need more than one. I think one is fine. And yeah, these are just the utility traps so you're able to get off of your Labyrinth engine. So that ends us off for the main deck. That's 40 cards in the main. Feel free to copy that. I'm only missing a couple of things in the extra deck. In fact, some of them are even just doubles. So yeah, let's get into it. Starting off with the only link one, Almirage. This is for if you like hard open Sangan or Skarm and you don't really have a hand that kind of gets them going. So just like there could be hands where you save yourself just by going into this. Like if you open Sangan even, you could just like normal Sangan, link it off, grab Santa Claus, tribute something, and like that could help you handle Mirai's Heart so you can play on your opponent's turn type of thing. So it just helps make like unplayable hands like a little bit more playable. 2 copies of Muckraker, really cool card. I play 2 of this just because I expect there could be certain really grindy duels where you just really want to keep reborning stuff. And this deck, more so than most Labyrinth builds, puts bodies on the field, so it's cool. Cherubini, just the one. You usually only need one to start the duel to get a bunch of resources going. I doubt I'll need the second one, but I will think about it. It is important to note, Cherubini is a fairy, so make sure you're being careful about that. That if you are using your Labyrinth traps and they're locking you into fiends, you can't be making this later. Or at least, you know, while you're still under the restriction. 1 Phoenix, you know, pretty basic. 1 Dark, again, not a fiends, keep that in mind, but still a good card and your whole deck is dark, so like it could come up to take some really powerful cards from your opponent. 1 Unicorn, 1 Unchained Abomination, and 1 Underworld Goddess. Just, you know, pretty much the only really generically good, you know, Fiend, Link 3, 4, and 5, so pretty cool. They don't come up too much, but they could. Then we get to the Exceed lineup. 2 copies of DD King, Stone King Darius, 2 DDD Divisor King Deus Machinex, and 1 Zeus. This is really cool. I actually still play 2 and 2 even with Prosperity because the first one is usually on turn 1. That's like you're making him with like double interruptions and he'll have a Skarm under him if you're making with Tour Guide. So he's going to get you a follow-up plus 2 interruptions, which is pretty good. And then the second one just becomes a basic strong line into Zeus. So it's a Zeus facilitating line. It's a good interruption anyway. I like them. They're cool. And the last card is Chaos Angel. This is the only one I don't have because of it's, you know, whatever, $50 right now. I just haven't shelled out the money for it just yet. I will eventually, but right now I'm just holding off. This card's pretty easy to make. To be fair, some of the levels, you'd think like because we're playing a more spammy version of the deck, it'd actually be easier, but it's kind of just the same as like a regular Labyrinth deck because the level 3s don't really add up that well to help you make something like Chaos Angels, so you end up just making it the same normal way, which is like one of your big Labyrinth mommies plus a Stovey Torby, which still gets the job done, especially since Toby summons himself back to the field instead of adding himself to hand when you trigger his effect in grave, which is cool. So yeah, there's the list for today. I'm really excited to get more testing with this. I honestly want to get as comfortable with this list as possible because I am planning on messing around with like the Fiend pile deck when that stuff comes out. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I really think that Labyrinth or the Unchained Link 2 really ties together a bunch of Fiend synergy that's kind of been close but not quite for where the, you know, for the level the game's been at for a while. But that's, you know, I'm excited to mess around with that. So here's my list. Hopefully you guys like it. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you have any suggestions for this list, please throw them down below. I really was looking around for that. A couple things in particular. 1, the hand trap lineup. What do I do with that? 2, the Ice Dragon's Prison. I messed around with a couple different ideas, Dynamiscus, stuff like that. I'd be curious on what you guys think about that, as well as stuff like the Field Spell. Do I play the Field Spell or not? Should I play the Shufflers or not? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on a bunch of those little tiny decisions there. Try and get as close to a solidified deck list as I can. But yeah, I'll leave it off on that. Thank you so much for watching. As always, guys, subscribe to the channel for more stuff from me down the line, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.